Hey everyone, welcome back to the Promised Land podcast, all about Manchester United with me, Scott Saunders. And I've got to be honest with you guys, I do owe you an explanation or several explanations and updates for the reasons why this podcast has been away. I do apologize. Let me just get this out there to start with. I really, really sincerely apologize because I haven't recorded since the day after United's last win, which happened to be at Manchester City on the 15th of December. I think the last time I recorded this was on the 16th of December. And since then, obviously, we've had the holiday period. We've had Man United. When we thought that they were going to turn a corner after that amazing Ahmad goal at the Etihad, we thought maybe this would be the turning point in Man United's season. Maybe this would be the turning point at Manchester United in general. And it's been anything but that, really. We've had a 4-3 defeat at Tottenham in the AFL Cup, a 3-0 home defeat to Bournemouth, 2-0 at Wolves with Bruno Fernandes getting sent off, 2-0 at home to Newcastle. So 4 defeats in a row over the holiday period. But obviously on Sunday, January the 5th, United turned up to Anfield and put in a really, really strong performance. So fingers crossed, we are now going to see a move forward and a move away from all of the chaos that has been happening on the pitch for Man United over the last, over the last couple of years, let's be honest with it. But Ruben Amorim's obviously in charge. He needs things to turn around as soon as possible. And hopefully the result at Anfield can be that pivot and that turning point. But we've seen results previously not amount to anything. But I think the reaction to that game from Amorim, from Lisandro Martinez, and from Bruno Fernandes at the weekend might stoke something. Hopefully, I'm speaking hopefully here, with Arsenal on the agenda in the FA Cup this weekend coming. And Arsenal aren't doing too well at the moment, losing 2-0 at home to Newcastle in the EFL Cup and failing really to kind of keep in touch with Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. But yeah, United, it's not been a good period for them. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different because obviously I need to address why I've been away for what is approaching, it's about 3 weeks or something like that, 3.5 weeks. And even before that episode that I did after the Manchester Derby, the recordings haven't been that regular. So I do need to apologize and I do need to offer some explanations today about why that is. And there's plenty of context behind it. There's plenty of reason behind it. But the news is going to be good if you like this podcast from here. I'll get into it. So keep listening if you can, if you do want to, if you like. And also, I'm going to have to go a lot heavier on this now. If you do like this podcast, then now more so than ever, I would really, 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 really appreciate your support on social media, through word of mouth, this kind of thing, because the Promised Land is that those gaps. You know, it was a really, really rough 2024, and I'll maybe reflect on that a little bit throughout the podcast today as well. So it's not going to be, there's reports of Kobbie Mainoo being sold to Chelsea. There's Marcus Rashford's agent in Milan. As I record this, there's so many news stories to go on with. It seems like United are never too far away from chaos in the media or on the pitch at the moment. But I promise you, I will get into that stuff maybe in later episodes. But because of the lack of recording and the lack of episodes and the lack of updates from me, I felt like this was the right time really to offer some kind of explanations and most importantly, say thank you to every single person who listens to this or who watches this on YouTube. I really, really sincerely, truly appreciate all of the support that you have given me and given Rob over the last few years. And it, from the bottom of my heart, I honestly mean that. It's been a very, very, very challenging 6-8 months or whatever for, obviously, if you've been listening to this podcast, I think you kind of know the context around all the problems that we've had. Losing Rob, obviously, is such a difficult thing. Just as a mate, Yeah, I'm gonna well up a little bit too much here. I that's not my intention today. I really need to kind of offer some explanations, but I'm trying to revert back to what a difficult kind of few months it's been for the people involved with the podcast, basically. And the recordings have been irregular. United have been awful on the pitch as well. And look, I think today I wanted to establish really that this, hopefully, well, it will be. This is going to be a new era for this podcast. And I wanted to start off by saying thank you to everybody who supported this to date. And just ask now for your support more than ever because of reasons I'll get into later on in this episode. But please, if you have not done so already and you're seeing this for the first time, please subscribe to the channel on Apple and Spotify, also on YouTube as well. We do record this podcast and put it out on YouTube. So whether you want to watch this on video on YouTube or listen to it on your audio platforms, please do. And please drop me a follow as well on social media at _Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. I'll put the link in the description. I've been saying this for a little while. I need to kind of revise that in my head and be able to repeat it. I haven't really been using Blue Sky all that much, but I know it is taking off as a platform. So I will be there as well. But yeah, please subscribe to the podcast. Please follow me on social and follow as well at TPLMUFC on X as well for show updates, because there's been a lot of personal context and personal updates from my end, which has meant some lack of recordings on this podcast, probably at a time where I think people might have needed this a lot more than usual as well, because it's been a really, really difficult month or so for United. But I have to come here today and explain the reasons for the silence, explain the reasons for what's happened with this podcast over the last few weeks and last few months, offer thank yous, and explain plans for the future. I suppose I think that is probably the right approach to take. And then what I can say really, just moving forward, is there will be more of these, a lot more than you would probably have ever wanted. I don't know. Maybe you do want more. I'm not sure. I think that's going to be something that I'm going to have to test out and see. But from now on, it is good news. Let me just say that as crazy as it is talking about Manchester United at the moment, for this podcast specifically, there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes over the last few weeks in order to make this podcast more frequent and more regular, and to establish it as the podcast that I want it to be. So let me just say that. And again, say thank you to everyone who subscribed previously, sent me messages asking, Scott, where the hell's the podcast? Where is it? I haven't really been able to say anything, but I think today is the right time to be able to come back out and offer my sincerest thanks and to offer you guys an explanation. So yeah, please subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube as well, and follow me on all of those social channels that I just mentioned. Anyway, right. So let's talk a little bit about Man United first. I think that's probably the right place to go here. There are, especially if you look through social media, it seems like you can't get through a day at the moment without something going wrong at Man United. We had a great day. Well, I say a great day. United still didn't beat Liverpool. Liverpool is still top of the league, and Liverpool might end up, by the end of the season, winning 20 titles and equaling United's all-time English league title haul. And that is not what anybody wants. But I think the position that United are in at the moment, that's just going to have to grin and bear it. But United did go to Anfield and show some fight at the weekend. And I think that is a good first step on the way to restoring United. But off the pitch, there are so many issues at the moment, which seems to get everybody down, seems to curse how the club is being run. And it seems like there's a media circus which just follows United around at the moment, which, look, I've been working in media for over a decade. And look, I've seen traffic reports, I've seen everything. All the metrics point to Man United being top of that tree. Let me just say that, right? I've worked in publishing. Obviously, I do a United podcast as well, and I know the numbers that I kind of get here. And I know the interest levels that everybody talks about Manchester United. United fans want United to do well, but everybody else wants Man United to fail. And currently, United are 13th in the league. They've never been lower than this in my lifetime at this point of the season, I don't think. And they have what? How many points do they have at the moment? It's 23 points out of 20 matches, 6 wins, 5 draws, 9 defeats. And it's doom and gloom on the pitch. There's talks about Man United getting relegated last week. And I made a joke about it, obviously, but I think, God, this is what this is what the media essentially thrives on at the moment. Because if you're my age and you grew up supporting another team, the phrase goes around of, oh, United ruined your childhood. I see that a lot on social media. If you weren't a United fan when you were growing up, then generally I think United ruined your childhood because they won absolutely everything. And now United are going through an era of not doing that, let's just say. And things have reversed a little bit, and we now see a media landscape which United do not help themselves at all, by the way. They do not help themselves at all with some of the decisions that they make. But the coverage around Manchester United at the moment is so doom and gloom that it's really, really difficult to find an escape and signs of positive light. And it's a beast that kind of circles around in cycles. It feeds itself, and any single update, around any Man United first team player, it seems like we get more focus on Man United probably than any club in the world, barring maybe Barcelona and Real Madrid. And that's just the way it is. And when things aren't going well, obviously it's a really, really, really challenging time, a really, really challenging headspace as well. And I've been struggling with that personally, because you're supposed to derive joy from football, right? And I know it's not the case for everyone, and we as United fans have been luckier than most over the last 30 years or so to see United win so many trophies. But I think this is just a time where United need to make some crucial decisions to start getting things right and turn themselves around in a different era for United. It seems Ineos are getting a hell of a lot of the blame for decisions that they're making. But I think I said on this podcast a few months ago, it's very, very important to remember the context of why United are in this position in the first place. And that is because of the owners that were in place before Ineos took control. And Ineos are now having to make decisions to clear up the mess that has been made by the Glazers and the people they put in place. So first off, that's a big point that I wanted to say. They will be painted as villains, and probably rightly so in a lot of cases. They're definitely not going to get everything right. But what needs to happen here is some decisions which are not going to be popular have to be made in order for United to get themselves out of this mess. I'm not talking about anything specifically there, but it's always important to kind of take a step away and think of the bigger picture, because what keeps the media cycle going is, oh, here's the latest update from around this player, or Kobbie Mainoo plays. I'll take Mainoo as an example. Kobbie Mainoo plays really well at Anfield, is the big hope that United have coming out of their academy. And the next thing is, oh, actually, Man United could end up selling Kobbie Mainoo because he's not signing a new contract and he wants £200,000 a week. What they're not saying and what they're not publicizing is Kobbie Mainoo is under contract till 2027 with an extra year till 2028, and they have plenty of time to sort that out. And what they're saying is, what this report is saying is that United will consider offers for most if not all of their players. But it's not, they're not talking about selling Kobbie Mainoo for 25 million quid. It's this is a position that, look, it'd be the worst news in the world, obviously, if United ended up entertaining that. But the position that United are in financially at the moment, they kind of need to make unpopular decisions which are going to get them out of the hole that they're in, because they're in a pretty big hole. And I think what this podcast has always been, and Rob coined this phrase, never too high, never too low. And I think we exist in a media landscape at the moment of the loudest voice often wins the day. maybe not wins the day, because you kind of get you get eyes on you. Let's just say that, and positive and negative. But I think there's always room for nuance. There's always room for painting a picture that actually things aren't as bad as they seem, and things aren't as good as they might always seem. What myself and Rob always tried to do with this podcast was take a little bit of a different angle, a bit more mature, let's just say, and take a step back and think, okay, why is this happening? And I think Rob and I always tried to do that. And in Rob's memory, I will obviously try to do that as well. The more I take on this podcast, the more episodes that I do, because I think even I fall into this, like I say, but I think we fall into this spiral of always thinking, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world, to the point where there was how many, can you imagine? Let me just say this. How much traffic there was in media for, hey, Man United could get relegated. Imagine. It's absolutely crazy. And look, United are miles away from that. As bad as it seems at the moment, as many jokes as I might make about it, come on. Let's be real here. I think you saw in the Liverpool game the other day that United can actually do it. And I think the problem is that they're not doing it consistently enough. And what I did see after that Anfield game the other day was Ruben Amorim come out and say, why can't we do this all the time? I'm really, really angry. So I think Ruben Amorim will have gone into training this week saying, guys, I'm really, really angry. We need to stop this facade. We need to stop this desire to get up for big matches and show yourself, in Manchester City away and Liverpool away, and start putting teams away like Southampton, who United play next midweek, and put teams away like Ipswich. This kind of thing. I think Amorim, I really trust in him. Maybe I said this about Eric Ten Hag, and I got a lot of criticism for this. I think I trust in him and what he wants to do more than I've trusted in any Man United manager since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. I will say that. I think he has all of the fight and the mettle and the insight to look at this project for what it is and understand that there's so much work to do here, but probably the best place that he can start, outside of shipping out some players because they don't fit his tactical plans and don't have the required energy to play in his system, the attitude is the most important thing. And I think if he can make a permanent fix to how United's players approach matches and drill that message home, and then obviously discard the players who maybe don't have that attitude and fit into that philosophy that he has, then that is going to be as much as he can do. And look, we might just have to, for a season, just grin and bear it as United mull around in 13th to 10th. Maybe. What I will say is, a few months ago, United were in danger of not even qualifying for the next round of the Europa League. And there's a lot of focus on top 4, top 5, and United are miles off it at the moment. They actually are. And they'll have to go on an amazing run to even get back into that conversation. But what United do have, alongside Tottenham, who are sitting one place and 1 point above them in the Premier League table at the moment, United have an opportunity in Europe where they are still among the favourites to win the Europa League, which offers a route back into the Champions League. So I think we kind of forget that. And if Amorim, even in that one competition, can get United's players to concentrate on the job at hand in those matches, United's talent is enough, really, that if their application is right, that they should go pretty far in that competition and challenge to win it. So I'm not saying that United will, but what we might have to do over the next few months is just grin and bear it and just understand that this is going to be a painful process in the Premier League specifically, and that change needs to happen. Everybody knows that change needs to happen. It seems like we get to a point where we just think change needs to happen. We need to see 10 players shipped out and 10 players signed in to come and be a part of the new manager's project. But what we are seeing at the moment is probably an alignment between the manager, between the technical director, and between the CEO on God, we need to fix this and we need to make decisions to the point where we are signing players who have all the fundamentals, have all the energy, all the, like, they're at the right age, the right potential to make sure that even if Ruben Amorim doesn't work, United have the right players to be able to move forward with a new manager. And I'm not saying that Ruben Amorim's in danger of losing his job or whatever, because he isn't. And I don't think that's the case. There's been so much talk about his system. The guy's never played a back four like properly in his life. He's always played this system because he believes in it. And the problem is not his system, it's the players that United have fitting into that system. And the problem will be moving players out and moving players in to make that system work at its best. So, look, let me just underline that at the moment. As bad as it looks at the moment, I think we can take some hope and belief from that Liverpool game. I think the fact that the Arsenal game is coming up in the next, it is the next game, with what they're doing at the moment, they don't look in great shape. Even the FA Cup, like that, when that was drawn and United were in bad form, you thought, oh, actually, that's a definite elimination from the FA Cup. But if United can apply themselves again in a big match away from home, like they did at Liverpool, I think United have a chance. We'll see. Arsenal's still the favourites, obviously, but I think it's important to explain here that as bad and as mad as the landscape is, this problem is not going to be fixed in 3 days or in a week or in a few months. This is a problem that United, from top to bottom, off the pitch and on it, they need to address this, and they need fixes, long-term fixes, and that will take a little while. So I go in not overly enjoying United matches at the moment because I see the same failings over and over again. But the best thing that I can do, and maybe you can do as well, is just kind of like, is this some advice? I don't know. But this is what I've been doing, is trying to detach a little bit from it and just understand that, hey, this is going to take a while. This is going to take a while. And ultimately, and maybe this isn't a popular opinion, but I do trust in the people that have been put in place. Jim Ratcliffe is getting a lot of criticism, but the people he's put in place underneath him, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, and Amorim himself, I kind of trust in them to make the right decisions eventually. So I think I take solace in that. And even though we're not seeing results on the pitch at the moment, I hope and think things might turn around. But obviously we will get into more of that on United. There's stories about Marcus Rashford, Kobbie Mainoo, all of these different players potentially leaving. United's FFP is so bad that they need to sell every academy player they have, and then they're going to sign more players, which are just going to end up ruining the team and ripping the soul out of the club. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case at all. So look, I think today is not the episode really for me, from my intention to go into that too deeply. But what I can say is that there will now be more episodes to come on this podcast because of a few decisions which I'll get into in a second. So let's explain it then. Right. So this is going to be a bit more of a personal section for me, and I hope that you can, if you're listening to this and you've been listening to this for a while, I hope you can kind of like just follow along with me, because I think this will be like 10 minutes or something like that, maybe 15, 20. But I kind of need to explain where the podcast has been, why it's not been regular, why I've been relatively silent, and just explain a bunch of context, personal decisions, and personal changes in my circumstance as well, and how the podcast fits into that too. So look, let's start with this then. So I think I looked at this morning, and this is episode 284 of The Promised Land. I think we've been going for 4 years-ish. I think 2021 was when this started. Myself and Rob came together. I think we understood pretty quickly that we were like-minded, and I think what I wanted from this podcast was to find somebody who was like-minded and not overreactionary to every single thing that happened at Manchester United, to just have a genuine, frank conversation, and to maybe not take everything at face value, and importantly, be never too high and never too low. And I know that really resonates with people who listen to this. So if anything, that is something that's a statement that's true to me and is true to what I want to do in the future as well. And look, I'll just say this again. Thank you so much to Rob for everything that he did for this podcast. And thank you to everybody that sent messages over the last few months after, obviously, the god-awful news. I really, really mean that. And around the time that happened, it kind of hit me then that I realized, oh my God, like, this podcast actually helps a lot of people. And how many people are still here, I don't know. But from the DMs that I get and the messages that I get, I think there's still plenty of you here who are waiting for podcast episodes to drop. And I just have to say thank you to him because of everything that I learned from him, his support in building the audience that we've managed to build. And I miss him dearly. I really, really do. And it's been such a challenge over the last few months to be able to pick up that baton and continue bringing you guys more podcasts when you're having to learn how to do this thing on your own. And I hope I've got better. I think I have in my self-confidence of being able to just talk straight down a camera lens or straight into a microphone and talk about Manchester United at length for 30, 40, 45 minutes or whatever, and still get to the point. So that's obviously been a massive challenge. It's been a massive challenge for me. And 2024 in general was it was a difficult year. We had we were recording episodes, and then towards the end of last season, obviously Rob was out, and I remember recording a piece from the FA Cup final, which just so happens to, I think that was the best episode according to the metrics. That even to this day, that was the most downloaded episode I think we've ever had, because United won the FA Cup, and Rob messaged me that day and essentially said he was in tears, and it was nice to hear that and to see that. Well, not see that. I obviously don't want to, you know what I mean, to see that it affected him in such a emotionally positive way to the point where he was kind of crying about it because United meant so much to him. But obviously then over the few weeks after that, losing Rob was just such a challenging and difficult moment, like one of the most difficult moments in my life personally, to lose a friend like that. And because this podcast was ours, and I wouldn't want to do one without him. And ultimately I had to learn new skills and had to dig up the motivation in myself to be able to bring you different episodes and new episodes and keep things going, while juggling another job. So I think I do need to explain this, right? So there's been some silence from me. There's been no episode for what is approaching a month, and recordings have been pretty irregular. Essentially because, as I put on social media, if you follow me on social media, you'll know this already if you've seen the post. But yeah, at @_Scott Saunders, I put this all over my my Instagram and my Twitter feed over the last weeks. That I was in employment for 11 years with the same company, and over the last month or so, I've stepped away from that role. So I've provided, well, poured my heart and soul into that role over the last few years, most of my adult life, and it's obviously a difficult moment to take a step away. But where this podcast fits into that, and how this relates to the podcast, is this podcast was part of that business. And the challenge has been during this process of me leaving is to essentially take this with me. And the good news is, and this is what I wanted to get to. The good news is that as of what day is it? Wednesday. As of Tuesday, so as of yesterday, uh, this podcast is now on a different network. So I have to say some big thank yous. We've a big thank you to the team at Sports Social. So this podcast, the Promise Land podcast, has now moved to the Sports Social podcast network, and that means that I have a lot more autonomy over the outputs of this podcast, and I have more drive, and let's just say that the podcast is mine. Let's just say that, and that is a massive, massive thing because I've been fighting for that for a few months, and it's been a little bit difficult. And obviously, there's lots of things to go through, lots of conversations to have, and this kind of thing. But I'm very, very appreciative to where I was working previously for allowing me to take this podcast and move it to the Sports Social. So as of yesterday, this podcast is now on the Sports Social network, and I'm sure there'll be announcements of that over the next few days. That is the audio feed on Spotify and Apple as well. YouTube, we might still see some slight changes. I don't know. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please subscribe to the podcast, the Promise Land and Manchester United podcast on Apple or Spotify, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, so that's been the big thing. How the podcast fits in and around the context of the job that I had previously. So I'm sure like maybe a good few of you might know me from working with 90 Min. And that was where I worked essentially from April 2016. And if you count a couple of years before that, I worked remotely. That's 11 years essentially. 11 years of my life, and the Promised Land was developed along that journey in 2021. So the good thing is now, after juggling other jobs and having other responsibilities, because I worked across social media, across video, and across the biggest part of and chunk of my job with 90 Min was essentially running the website for a good few years and contributing to the website and deciding the directions that we were going to take it, this kind of thing. Lots of things have changed personally for me in that journey over the last 18 months or so. And now it's come to the point where I'm essentially going out solo, and I wanted to take the podcast with me. And as of now, I've been able to do that. So what that does mean is that there's a hell of a lot more freedom now for me to just jump on and talk about Manchester United and things that are happening with Manchester United. We used to do 1 or 2 episodes a week. I could do as many as I want. And I'm not sure how many of you want more. So please, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear it, whether that's on social media, in the comments section, or whatever. Send me a DM, send me a message. I would really appreciate it if you've got this far into it, 34 minutes into the podcast, 33 minutes into the podcast. Please let me know if you would like more, because I think it's certainly my intention to do more. And being part of the Sports Social network now gives me the opportunity to do that, and gives me the opportunity to develop and grow this podcast as far and wide as I can. And I would so appreciate it if you like this podcast to offer as much support as you can and shout about it and advertise it and help me kind of reach other people. Because what I see at the moment is, look, there's a hell of a lot of really, really, really strong creators out there and really good voices in the community. But I think, as is the way that social media is nowadays, everything is sensationalized. Everything is just so over the top. And it, in one direction or the other, you're either the best team in the world or the worst. And United, with the results that they're having, are essentially the worst team in the world all the time. And it's really, really, really draining. But the way I approach things in life in general, not just football, is try and take a step back and take a critical and critically think about what I am, you know, how I'm interpreting stuff. And I think working in media for a long time, as I mentioned earlier on, there's only one team that tops the traffic reports. There's only one team that is as socially engaged, is top of the social engagement. That is this team that we're talking about, Manchester United. So if that is the case, every single story, every single small story, every single development of when David De Gea goes to Tesco or something like that, all of that runs in the Daily Mail, all of that, there's a magnifying glass on it because of the interest levels that United have. And I do not want to, I'll put this out there now. My intention is absolutely not to join that sensationalist side of things. It doesn't sit well with me. My mantra, and again, I credit Rob for this, never too high, never too low, and try and take that approach at all times. And I think with the growth of this podcast over the last few years, that there's definitely like-minded people who need that. So that's my intention. That is what I want to do. I'm now on, or this podcast is on a new network, which kind of gives me the license and gives me the freedom to provide more. There's still a lot of things I need to fix and sort out. In terms of design, I am awful. Social media, I need to get on that as well. And like part of my New Year's resolutions has been, hey, you just need to put yourself out there a little bit more, because I'm 35 years old at the end of the day. I kind of grew up seeing social media develop, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going to need to kind of get with the younger people, but it's so, it's so essentially accepted nowadays that you kind of you can put yourself out there by filming yourself, and that's just the way that the world is. That's how things travel, and it's taken me a little while to adjust to that. But I think that's just the way that I have to go, and the way that I'd like to go. But I want to stay true to that never too high, never too low, and that is my intention. I would love if you guys listen to this and you think I'm not staying true to that. Please keep me in check. Tell me honestly. I really mean that, because what I'm looking to provide here is just a different take, and it's somewhere in the middle, basically. Don't think United are ever going to be the worst or the best. Hey, hopefully they one day get back to being the best. But it's a very, very challenging time for United, and I feel like just with all the noise going on around United at the moment, that podcasts like this and with the approaches like this are needed more than ever. So I would like to say sorry to start with, that I've not been able to bring you this podcast for the last month or so, and things have been irregular over the last few months. But I would like to say that this now will hopefully go up a level. I have the personal drive to do it. I would like to do it. And even to the point where if you would like one podcast a day, maybe I can do that. But I think we'll see how it goes, and we will see exactly how much, demand that there is, and how people take to this. But I think, I've pretty much explained everything I wanted to explain. And hopefully there's a better future. So I just wanted to say, to end this, thank you to every single person. I know I've said this already, but thank you to every single person who watches this or who listens to this, because your support has been, you will not know how much your support means. And it's taken me a good while to understand that the scale of that support that there is out there, and to embrace it, and to understand that, hey, actually people might want this more. So look, I think this is just a different episode for now, but I do promise that there's so much going on around United at the moment. There's so much I can talk about, that there's plenty of opportunity for me to talk about it over the next few weeks. The matches are coming thick and fast, and if you want it, I can provide it. And what I will say again, so many times, thank you so much to everyone who has supported this podcast, listened to this podcast, tweeted about this podcast, put this podcast in your Spotify Wrapped on and sent it to me. You know, I had a good few of those over the Christmas period as well. It really, really, really means a lot to me. And what I will say now is a big thank you, and I'll hold myself to account with how I deliver this content and how I deliver these messages. And I'll hold myself to account. If people want more of this, then I'm in a position now where I can provide more and uh, fully concentrate on it. So, all in all, it's really, really good news. And hopefully, at a time where United are in their worst season in Premier League history, seems like that always happens in the last few years. But since they're 13th in the league table, I think maybe people need to just have something that is a little bit not OTT and have a bit more of a conversation. Look, I've got so much more freedom here to kind of take this podcast in directions that I want to take it and spread the word far and wide. So, look, it is like I say, I've been going on for 40 odd minutes here, and I'm not going to say thank you again because I've said it so many times, but maybe I'll say thank you to the people who supported me through the process. It's been a really difficult month for me. Thank you to my family and to my friends and to everybody that sent me messages when I put that message out on social about the changes that are happening with me. And thanks to everyone that supported this podcast over the last few months. And fingers crossed, hopefully, this is the mark of a new era and better days for not only this podcast, but after drawing at Anfield and showing that there's a little bit of fight and metal. I need to try and show that myself and back myself in order to be able to bring you more Promised Land podcasts. But yeah, just to recap, thank you so much to Sports Social, who have taken this podcast on board, and we can now hopefully move forward and take this podcast to places that we've never seen them go before. But thanks to everyone who's been listening. And a quick reminder, if you've not subscribed already, please do. The Promised Land and Manchester United podcast on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify for video and audio. And please, as well, follow me on social media at @Scott Saunders for all the latest around things that I'm doing, around things related to Manchester United as well. Little bit of wit and sarcasm, hopefully, if you think that I can provide that. And the important thing that I will end with is, guys, never too high, never too low. Until next time, I'll see you soon, all right, for another Promised Land podcast. But until next time, thank you so much to everyone who's been listening and for watching. And until next time, I've been Scott from the Promised Land podcast. See you soon.